Welcome back to the guide, Exile. In this video we're going to be covering the following topics. Now we're going to talk about some damage type, the gear, and defenses we can use against it. Damage can occur from attacks or spells in three main types: physical, elemental, and chaos. Physical damage mainly occurs from attack-based offense, but some spells also deal physical damage. The main form of mitigation for physical damage is armor. However, many other options can be used or stacked with armor to make it a much more effective reduction. Physical damage can be considered one of the more stronger damage types in the game, as most monsters have poor physical damage mitigation. Elemental damage consists of three elements: fire, cold, and lightning. Elemental damage is one of the most abundant damage types among monsters and players, and the hardest to mitigate. The main source of elemental mitigation are your elemental resistances, but it can, like armor, be paired with many other types of mitigation to increase its effectiveness. Chaos damage is the rarest type of damage, and like elemental damage, has a resistance, but it is also very hard to obtain resistance for. The game is balanced around the player having 0 chaos resistance, but most can get away with the default -60 resistance they see by merciless difficulty. Chaos damage is special in that it ignores energy shield, and damages life directly, unless unique items are used or the Chaos Inoculation Keystone is taken. Each primary damage also has a secondary damage or status ailment that it can incur. Physical can inflict bleed, which is a damage over time that increases its damage output by 5 when the target that is bleeding moves. Fire can inflict ignites, which is fire damage over time for a default period of 4 seconds. Only the strongest ignite is applied at one time though. Cold can inflict chill and freeze, which is a disabler, slowing or stopping the target in their path, causing them to shatter upon death if frozen. Lightning can inflict shock, which causes the shock target to take 50% increased damage from all sources. And finally, chaos, and some physical damage, can inflict poison, which is chaos damage over time, with a default period of 2 seconds. It is similar to ignite, but it can be applied numerous times with no stack limit. Now, many enemies unfortunately have immunities to one or more of these secondary damage types in the later portions of the game. However, there are no enemies that have immunities to primary damage type, only resistances. Now, keeping in the realm of damage types, we're also going to look at critical strikes. Now, critical strikes are rolled at the time of action of the attack or spell. Thus, every time a skill is used, it performs normal damage or critical damage. Attack critical strike chance is based on the local critical strike chance of the weapon being used. Spell critical strike chance is based on the local critical strike chance of the spell skill gem. Both can be scaled via % increased critical strike chance from modifiers in the passive tree, support skills, and gear. Critical strike deal increased damage based on the dealer's critical strike multiplier. And always inflict elemental status ailments of the respective elements that are involved in the attack or spell. Characters have a default 150% base critical strike multiplier, and can obtain more via % to critical strike multiplier from the passive tree, support gems, and gear. Here we can see the actual equation used to calculate critical strike damage. As we can see, the critical strike damage is calculated by multiplying the base damage of the attack or spell by the summation of the base critical strike multiplier, and the additional critical strike multiplier gained from other sources. Now that we've looked at damage types and how critical strikes are made, we should take a general look at how value calculations are made in Path of Exile with the different modifiers that exist. In Path of Exile, there are increased and reduced, and more and less modifiers. These work in different ways, and it is important to realize the difference between them. Increased and reduced modifiers are additive in that they are added together and then multiplied against the base value. Say we have a base of 100, and we have 3 nodes from the passive tree that read 25%, 15%, and another 15% increased value. Here we would have the following calculation for the final value. More and less modifiers are multiplicative in that they are all multiplied together against the base value. Again, say we have a base of 100 and we have 3 nodes from the passive tree that instead read 25%, 15%, and 15% more value. Here we will have the following calculation for the final value. As we can see, the values from this are larger than the increased values. Now this goes the same way for reduced and less modifiers, where less modifiers will produce a smaller number than reduced. Now if we go ahead and put both of those increased and more modifiers together against the same base number, we get the following calculation. It is important to differentiate these modifiers when considering damage output or mitigation, as they appear frequently and have very different results.